looking at the stories making the headlines. As always, would love it for you to be a part of the conversation. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 You can also tweet at smooth981. Wade Chibuzor, good morning to you.
Good morning, Zibby.
Yes. Zibby.
I know.
With an extra Y sometimes. Just plain.
Okay.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Wadi. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning, Lagos. Happy New Year to Lagos. I'm not. Were you in the studio last week?
I was.
Okay, so maybe I haven't come into the studio this year. Happy New
Are
Year.
you sure? Yeah. I saw you this year. I saw you last week.
No.
I'm sure I did.
No.
Really? Okay, maybe it was last year. Yeah. Technically, that was a few days ago.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's get straight into the conversation. The WhatsApp number again, 0809 440 And Paul's threatened, INEC warns this comes from The Nation. Now, the INEC press and chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has hinted of election shift in volatile areas. And he says that elections may be postponed in flashpoints if the situation doesn't improve. Now, he warned that the results of the 2023 polls may not be declared if elections are cancelled in constituencies as a result of worsening security.
Okay, this is, I suspect we'll be probably taking this type of stories on a weekly basis until we get to the election. So this is another installment in the INEC Chronicles and Election Chronicles. I think this is part 3 or part 4. So the INEC chairman is basically saying the obvious in quotes. There's obviously a state of insecurity in the country, and he's speaking specifically to attacks on INEC installations, INEC facilities that would typically support the smooth running of the elections. He's also speaking to the fact that with increased insecurity in particular areas, it might cause challenges with having to collect results, having to get the results, having to basically conduct an election. But there's hope out there, because I think 8 years ago, we had worst cases with Boko Haram taking over a sizable chunk of the country, and somehow we managed to come out with a credible election.
Yeah, but the elections were postponed, though, remember?
In some spaces, but at the end of the day, we're able to come out with an election, we're able to come out with a result. So I'm hoping that we will be able to, make things work the same way we made things work 8 years ago and 4 years ago. But more serious matters, obviously, insecurity is becoming, or has become, the number one item on our tables. It's affecting our food security. It's affecting it could possibly trigger a constitutional crisis with respect to the elections. It's affecting the general livelihood, and even the fact that people are leaving the country. A lot of people I know who have left the country have attributed it to number one, insecurity. They've given up their high class or middle class lives in Nigeria to go and start over again because they are basically scared for their lives. So we need to ask ourselves these questions: how important is this? And it's extremely important. And when we're going into the next elections, we also need to ask those questions to those guys who are stepping up and saying that they want to run for office, not just at presidential level, also at the gubernatorial levels. How do they intend to be part of a system that solves this problem? Because it's not just going to be solved by the president. It's going to be solved by every single tier. Some of the guys who are running the political system are responsible for some of these issues that we're dealing with today, because the political class basically over the years have armed a lot of these guys who are now becoming problematic for the system to sort out. So we need to hold our leaders accountable and everybody who's aspiring to leadership and ask them, how do we want to solve this problem? Because guess what? It's holding us back. We have a beautiful country, we have a beautiful nation. We're not able to sell it, we're not able to feed from it, we're not able to do anything in it because we can't guarantee ourselves our security. And now at the end of the day, we are challenging ourselves about an election that should hold like every other election every other 4 years. And the major issue we're talking about today is insecurity. So Nigerians need to ask ourselves the questions: how important it is, and challenge our leaders and aspiring leaders to sort this problem out.
Okay, let's move on to Punch. Cash limits. Customers protest as banks begin enforcement. Now, over 20 deposit money banks began the implementation of the Central Bank of Nigeria's new cash withdrawal limit policy. The governor of the CBN had, on the 21st of December, bowed to pressure and actually revised the initial limits that had been announced.
I'm so excited. I've been one who has continually supported this move. It's been 10 years now since we started the cashless policy in Nigeria, and we just didn't get anywhere. So I'm glad that at least some banks have started. I'm sure by the end of this month, all the banks would adhere to the new policy. Like I always tell everybody, there are huge opportunities for investments by the financial services sector, by the telecoms and information technology sector in improving the infrastructure towards giving Nigerians the opportunity to be real cashless. Customers will complain, but we'll get used to it.
But why are customers protesting, considering that they knew that this was going to happen?
Well, because everybody believed that it will be business as usual. That, oh, don't worry, CBN will wake up and say, oh, we'll change the dates. Actually, they changed the limit, so they will change the date, or by January 31, they will extend it. I don't think, going by this, I don't think they will do that. Like I continue to say, huge opportunities for the financial services sector, the telecoms, the information technology sector to improve on their infrastructure, get more Nigerians onto the banking system. We're continually talking about credits. We can't have a credit system if 80% of your businesses are done with cash, and this is what I see. So I'm glad that this has taken off. There'll be teething problems at the end of the day.
So one of my concerns is, why do we have to put the cart before the horse? Why? Because what you stated basically is the fact that there are opportunities, which I agree, for a lot of these players to actually build an ecosystem and make this work. Why wasn't this part of the roadmap to actually get them to build it?
But
Before it's
no. You
keep
see,
doing that.
No. And I want to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
We've been in the cashless policy for the last 10 years.
Okay.
The infrastructure development over the last 10 years towards supporting the financial services sector has really improved. There will be hitches here and there. One of the major issues is power. But until last year, with the sudden rising in diesel cost, 24/7, many times, failures will always come. In the last 2 years, the number of transactions that have gone that are cashless is continually increasing. Go look at NIBS, go look at the new, all the people, the fintech players coming into the system. I do believe that we have wasted so much time, and it's because we never implement policies to the latter. It was a roadmap that was designed 10 years ago. Are you with me? Somewhere along the line, we just seem to, divert like we always do. Policies, this is one country that that has the number of policies that we have. And I give a typical example. Trucks are not supposed to be on the road between 10 a.m. between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. This is not a new policy or a new law in Nigeria. It's been in existence since the 70s.
Yeah.
So when we don't implement them, we come back to where we are. Today, you are struggling. If you're not struggling with a tanker that has broken down, the one that falls from the top of the bridge, and these are the things that are we going to implement this to the letter? So far,
I don't want us to divert so much from this, because when you put the example of the truck, so if you remove the trucks, if you put the time limit to the trucks, but your demand for trucks keep increasing, the number of trucks keep entering,
which is
having a solution for it. So at the end of the day.
So Chibuzor, when you heard over the last 8 years of infrastructure development by this administration, the rail lines where the kidnappings have increased now. I'm sure you will speak about that. But at the end of the day, what creates opportunities is when policies are being implemented, people have no choice but to invest. If you have, let me just use a very simple example. If you sell pure water, are you with me? And they say, this area, a competition has come that has increased this production. You would not just keep your money, you would try and compete. And these are the things it creates for competition, it creates for people to actually improve on the service provision. And you go to the banks, you go to everywhere, and it gives room for so much collaboration. Small businesses can better collaborate, can get access to the kind of funding that they require from financial institutions and financial service providers. And I see the huge opportunities. Are they going to improve on the infrastructure? Now, you don't really have a choice. But to be fair, over the last 10 years, so much has been invested in ensuring that we even keep up with having power is a major issue. and we'll get to that on another day.
All right, so let's move on to this day. One dead, two officers injured as Yoruba Nation agitators police clash. Now, one person is reported to have died, and two police officers injured from gunshots following a bloody clash between the Yoruba Nation agitators and men of the Nigeria Police Force in the Ojota area. Now, the clash was said to have ensued after persons masquerading as Yoruba Nation agitators disrupted social and commercial activities in that area.
So, for point of, so specifically to this issue, I live within the Ojota area, so I live somewhere around the Ojota area. So yesterday morning, actually, I had taken a walk out of the house, only to see vehicles diverting down the good road and like what was happening. So initially, the information wasn't so clear. Then someone came home and said, "Oh, they are fighting and they were shot at Ojota." Now, obviously, when the story came out later, we heard that, oh, hey, you had Yoruba. In fact, there was this viral video that was going up right now where there was a guy who was basically, for lack of a better word, calling for ethnic conflict. That, oh, so people from a particular tribe were being killed, and that they were going to make things crazy. They were going to bomb, destroy police vehicles, do all sorts of things. And it's not something that we've not seen before. So basically, like they said at the start of the story, there was supposed to be a gathering of the Yoruba, I think it's basically Yoruba Nation there's the Yoruba Nation Agitators Group, sorry, let me get the proper name.
Yes.
Because I don't want to misspeak. Okay, so basically you had the Yoruba Nation proponents, and they were supposed to have a gathering yesterday. And the story isn't so clear as at now, but obviously they said there was a clash by the police. The viral video that was going around spoke about some stray bullets that had hit one or two of their members and they had passed. And obviously that drove a response by other people, and obviously that led to whatever it was. Now, because things are not so clear, but I would speak to the entire idea of ethnic agitation by various groups for whatever they're agitating for. So my viewpoint about this is that basically everybody has a right to ask for whatever they want to ask for, as long as they are within the remit of the law. The fact that you have a particular opinion, a particular viewpoint, which is not illegal, does not make it and it does not give you an excuse to destroy property or to harm other people or to actually get at the necks of other people who don't agree with you. And that's one part of it. The other side is for the security services. And my challenge with the security services today is that our security forces still act as a force. There is little or no. Whenever this happens, I am not surprised, because basically everything to them is like, like the story about the carpenter and the nail. Every problem is a nail or a carpenter to use a hammer on, which is the way we deal with these issues. And unfortunately, in our experience as a nation, we've seen these things expand, these problems expand. I believe as last year we had the issue with, I think it was Sunday Google, which we had to deal with. It has died down after we went through the entire court process. And for me, I would rather they use the legal system, if these guys have stepped over the line, to sort out those problems. The fact that a group of people are saying that, hey, we want our own nation, as long as they've not crossed any lines of legality, they haven't committed any crimes. What I expect the police to do in those kind of instances, and I'm speaking because of obviously the details are not clear at this point, would be to ensure that at least at those gatherings, there's some level of security provided to ensure that things do not escalate. It is when things escalate, then you can use your numbers, then if you're planned properly, you can take care of this. But especially in areas like Ojota, which is basically center of almost everywhere, these things have a tendency to escalate. The idea for the security forces is typically to stop it from happening in the first place. So when they want to gather, I say, we don't want you to gather. Instead of actually providing security, ensuring that they do not go past their limits, they say, we don't want you to. They don't want to deal with the issues. Unfortunately, as a nation, we have to learn how to deal with this kind of issues going forward, because various people are going to come with their various opinions, and we need to listen to these opinions and learn from these opinions.
I just want to say though, why are we seeing a rise or an increase in these separatist groups?
I think it's, in a way, it's obvious. Nigerians are looking for a solution. They are looking for a hope. One of the reasons why one of the candidates in this particular election is being followed by a lot of young people is not so much because he's putting out anything that is far greater than any other person, but because of it offers hope. What a lot of Nigerians or people within this structure called Nigeria today are asking themselves is that, hey, are we not better off on our own than being part of this structure? There's always been this tale about, oh, these people are holding us back from development. If we get rid of them, we will be able to move forward. If you look back at the Oka coup, one of the things, in fact, the speech at the Oka coup was basically set back to basically remove a chunk of the country from the country. And it's something that it's a question I've asked myself, even as an individual, that as we are today, are we better as we are as this entity, or are we better in chunks of units? And one of the things I always tell people is that if you look at the various entities and how we are located geographically, there are some chunks of the country that will probably be able to survive on their own, but there are others that will be extremely dependent on the other units, even if they choose to go their way. And it's things like access to the waterways, having ports, the fact that a chunk of the country is landlocked, the fact that a lot of these other parts of the country are agrarian, and for them to move forward, they need to be able to sell their goods and services to the other parts of the countries which they've excluded. So for me, long run is, if you look at the entity come to Nigeria, what we need to ask ourselves is not if we should stay together, it's how we should stay together.
And move forward better.
Yeah. But unfortunately, a lot of leaders, in quote, and I'm using this word leaders, a lot of these guys are used to building their own small ethnic conclaves. And they look at these opportunities as an opportunity to build their own fresh ethnic conclave and get some sort of relevance.
All right, let's take some messages coming through. This one is from Shegun. Shegun says, the so-called Yoruba Nation agitators should start by holding the governors, local government officials, and legislators in the Southwest to account on how they run their states, since they are closest to them. Charity begins at home. Pastor Dapo, I'm just going to pull that up, says, good morning. I feel they are putting the horse before the cart. Cashless policies should be integrated gradually. How many people in the rural communities have access to internet for online transfers? Even at that, with the epileptic online banking services, we can't solely rely on that. They need to perfect all these before they enforce it. And another message coming through from Ian, it says, police officers sustained injuries from gunshots. Is this from the officers or were the agitators armed? Whichever way it is, it does not sound nice. All right, so let's go on to The Guardian. Northern youth threaten to shut region over tuition hike. Now, the coalition of northern groups, the students' wing, has threatened to shut down the region over an increase in tuition fees by tertiary institutions. The group also demanded the northern elite and other stakeholders to speak up against the passage of the education loan bill, as the sustainability of the loan is not guaranteed.
I listened to you and Rotus talk about the education loan bill, but the truth of the matter is the universities can cope. I don't really think that increasing tuition at this point in time is the right thing. So I understand the plight of the students, and especially when you consider the fact that over the last 6-7 years, the North has been most hit when it comes to economic downturn. At the end of the day, these things must happen. Universities must also start to look for, aside from the government, must also start to look for other ways of raising funds. Aside from school fees, the easiest thing to do is just increase the fees of the school. And with the education bill, the question is, how does it work and how will it work? Is it who is guaranteeing it? The government, who has not been able to even guarantee that they can fund the educational system, are they going to guarantee the loans of millions of Nigerians who take loans from financial institutions or other grant institutions and so on? But do the schools need to increase the fees? I do think so. Is this the right time? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I will go that route now. Currently, that's my opinion. Currently, I don't think I'll go that route. And I see where the students are coming from. But it's all over. Private schools are increasing their fees. Public schools can't do that unnecessarily until government gives them some form of leeway. And that's where we see. And with the ASU strike over the last 8 months, I just think
So for me, it's and I always feel challenged when people bring this new products or whatever because I see it as a big product. This is the same. We're looking at the same government that is. Last week, I think one of the senators or members of the House of Reps was, I think it was is it Nip Sproul or whatever, where they want to write off about 180 something billion of loans that were given out during the COVID era. And what irritated me was when the senator was saying, "Oh, but other countries give at least their people 4 times this what we give them." So it was basically like, we can write it off, which unfortunately seems to be the mindset of a lot of the guys who head things in Nigeria. There is this mindset of we have plenty, so we can afford to give plenty. The fact that we need to get to some point where we have find the balance between right pricing education, especially at the tertiary level, and being able to see how can people finance the education. And I spoke to you about last week. The student loans are something that we need to get in, but we need to think how is it going to get funded. You can't keep throwing this problem on the private sector where you keep on increasing how much they are paying without giving them any value. They are still paying for all the costs they've been paying for last year. You're asking them to pay more because that they want to contribute to a system that they don't know when they're going to get value out of it.
Okay, next story comes from Punch. Scarcity, federal government orders NNPC to reduce petrol price. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company is selling PMS at a loss because of its mandate from the federal government, and this was stated by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva. And he said this just as oil marketers stated that the supply hitches in the downstream sector that often leads to fuel scarcity might persist till June, based on the government's plan, of course, to end petrol subsidy in that month.
So the minister, I think, is the Minister for State.
Yes.
I think the president is still the minister.
The Minister of Petroleum.
Which is another thing, which is discussion for another day, really. So what he's basically saying is that we're selling petrol less than our neighbors, or PMS, basically less than our neighbors. We should be paying more for it, and because of we are not paying what we should be paying, we are paying subsidy, and that is the cause of all our problems. A lot of people have been advocating the silver bullet to solve subsidy issues that once we remove subsidy, all the problems will be sorted out.
No, it won't be.
And that's one of my major pain points, because basically we've looked at we in the last 8 years, and even before the 8 years, when this government came into play, one of the things that they shouted the loudest was that, hey, subsidy was, what did he call it? He said it was a scam. It was a scam. Subsidy was a scam. There was corruption around the subsidy regime, all that. But what have we seen within this government coming in and the last government, that we've actually seen the increase in the amount being paid for subsidy as we move from government to government. And nobody's asking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And we're all back to the same thing. We need to remove subsidy. That our neighbors down there our neighbors across the road obviously are paying more. I don't disagree. There's the basic concept of arbitrage means that I can go to Benin Republic, but find a way to get PMS out of this country across the border into Benin Republic, sell it at a higher rate, and bring it back into the country. And sell at a higher rate and make my margins. And that's arbitrage. It will happen especially as long as you have a next door neighbor who can supply a product at a higher price than what you can. So subsidy, removing subsidy will tend to solve that problem. But does this solve the problem of endemic corruption in the system? Does this solve the problem where we can't account for how much product we are coming out with, how much we are moving into the system? Does this solve the problem where in 2022 or 2023, we can't track the amount of products we are moving in and out of this country, amount of products we are consuming as a country in our roads and our cars? We try to make it a simplistic thing and say, oh, it's only the guys who have cars that need fuel. But we've talked earlier about the power problems. And guess what? There's something called I better pass my neighbor. And it's not used by the guys. In a lot of cases, it's not used by the guy who has a car. It's used by the barber who's offering a small service. It's used by the welder who's offering a small service. It's used by anybody that can afford to buy it, who's offering a small service. So the cost of increasing that fuel price is not just going to hit the pocket of the guy who somebody like me who has a car or 2 cars. It's going to hit the guy or the one who is selling a car down the road, because it's an input into the cost of her getting her beans to her pot or her frying pan where she can present that product. It's an input into a lot of things, into the cars that bring the produce to the market. So as a country, we need to look at the entire impact of that problem and before we start talking about the entire removal of subsidy, we say how do we cushion that problem? If not, our inflation numbers will just start keep growing, and that becomes another problem for another day.
Okay, you can send the messages to 0809 4440981. Joseph says, good morning. I'm disagreeing with Lakunle. Well, Lakunle is not in today, so it's Wade and Chibuzor. I'm disagreeing. Why CBN, the banks, and telcos don't work on network issues relating to transfers? It's caused a lot of problems between customers and receivers who don't receive credit alerts. I'm a victim of the madness. I transferred to a particular bank so as to have the money in bulk to execute my spending. Until date, I haven't been able to access the account despite no known mentioned problems that would hinder transactions. The financial institutions need to do the needful. Yemi from Marina says, good morning. I quite agree with you when you said the cashless policy has been in existence for 10 years now. It is, however, only in Africa that the government will wake up a couple of months earlier and tell the entire country that they have a plan to change a way of life that they've lived for the entirety of their lives. This is why we have roadmaps to prepare ahead of time. And if I may ask again, why now? God bless Nigeria. All right.
10 years is not a long period for the roadmap to work. Anyway.
Vanguard. Edo train kidnap. Abductors demand 20 million naira per victim. Now, information coming from Benin City in Edo State confirm or indicate that kidnappers from Saturday's Igwebe incident have contacted family members and are demanding 20 million naira per victim. Now, an indigent of the community told a pressman that the security personnel had informed him about the latest developments. However, the police public relations officer said he would work on this information to confirm whether it is correct.
So, based on the news, about 21 people were kidnapped. According to some news yesterday, 6 people had been rescued. So if we're saying 20 million for each person, that's about 620 million before the 6 people were rescued. So you take away 120 million, so that's 500 million. Now the question for me is, first and foremost, all the lapses we're seeing in terms of how it happened, and speaking to Chibuzor off air just now, it's become an issue of where someone just sits down and says, you know what, there's nothing to do, there's no money, and we don't have work,
no skills.
Just do some surveillance and and the next day you carry 31 people and you're demanding for money.
Wow.
The next thing you're going to hear is that, oh, you must bring this money in cash and it must be the new currency, or you must bring it in foreign currency. And it just beats me. What is the security apparatus doing in Nigeria? It's been like this for God knows how long. It's been so long that you can't even speak about it. But when you demand for 20 million, the first thing is, who are the people that were even kidnapped? Do they have 20 million? Can they raise 20 million? Even if they can raise 20 million, is the government going to pay 20 million to rescue these people? And it just continues on and on and on. So it becomes a cycle that everybody wakes up today and says, okay, I'm high, look for a gun, and maybe I'll come to Smooth and pick up everybody and say,
knock on wood. Knock on wood.
And that's it for me. It's a shame, and we're getting into the end of this administration, and we don't see it. Well, I don't see it.
Is there a role, though, that members of communities have to play as citizens? Because we can't all just leave security to the security agencies. Some of these people who are kidnapped are being held in compounds, in communities, where there are people who are actively aware of this situation, of what the people are doing.
I agree. So community policing as a whole, or community security as a whole in Nigeria, has just gone down the drain. And it's because of this ideology that once the person has money, blah blah blah, he can dictate and all. So people really are not doing what they should do and speak out in terms of what they think is right or wrong. And it's the way we've seen it over the last 30-40 years.
So for me, I just like to, for me, there are two things. People need to understand what our rights are and what our responsibilities start with, because unfortunately we seem to have muddied both things when we look at and it speaks to how we perceive ourselves as citizens of Nigeria. We don't. A lot of us don't.
A lot of us are not
We
Nigerians.
don't even think about Nigeria as an entity. Nigeria is just a place that
that we
live in.
It's just the name of a place.
Yes, just a normal place. And the second thing is about needs to be trust in the security system and the security forces. As long as there's no trust, nobody's going to go and volunteer any information, because he hears if I volunteer information tomorrow,
and then they
in the
come
middle of the night, somebody's going to knock on my door because he's got information to the people I told. So until we build our trust, it won't happen, or it will challenge for it to happen.
And I completely agree with you. There is lack of trust in governance across all levels in Nigeria.
Well, that's all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed. Thank you so much, Wade. Thank you so much, Chibuzor, for joining me on the show this morning. And thank you so much for your messages as well. Do stay with us. Smooth Breakfast continues.
The headline.
That's where we are in Nigeria.
Thank you.
There's an advert they do on
In-depth analysis
radio,
of national
and I
current
listened
affairs.
to it. So it's like the man used to be the landlord seller. I think it's mega million lottery. And then he comes in, and then the landlord is telling the security man that follows him that he should pay me his rent.